What's it going to take? What's it going to take for us to get it together and to get together in a post-COVID world? That's a question which those of us involved in community formation in the Messianic Jewish world should be asking ourselves. What is it going to take for us to get together and to get it together in a post-COVID world? Either a world where COVID is no longer on the scene, God willing, or a post-COVID world in which we've just learned that we have to live with this pandemic rearing its ugly head periodically. How are we going to get it together in that world? That's an important question. And a subsidiary question is, what's not going to work to get the job done? Especially, what have we done in the past that, as good as it may be, is not enough to get the job done? I want to look at those questions with you briefly today. And I hope that this investigation is going to help you and help me to get the job done. Let's take a look. This is the job. We've been summarizing it for a number of weeks. And briefly, we're supposed to be forming outposts of the kingdom, embassies of the age to come. This should be face-to-face gatherings of the Father's family, where we mature in the family likeness, learning to love the Lord our God with all our hearts, with all our souls, with all our minds, where we demonstrate the obedience of faith for the sake of his name. We're not just loving each other, but we're also loving God. You know, Yeshua said the two great commandments are loving the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, and mind, and loving our neighbor as ourselves. So we need to mature in the obedience of faith, that is, the obedience that shows our love for God. In these ways, we're expressing and expanding the kingdom. That's our job description, really, to express the kingdom, its powers, its values, its nature, and to expand that kingdom. And we do that through multiplying other small fellowships, how face-to-face fellowships of the Father's family, multiplying. I'll say more about that in just a moment, but let's look for a moment at something that is related to this. So just hold on one moment. I'm going to give you one more thing to look at. So let's look at it now. What's not enough to get the job done? That's a good question. Let's start over here. A dues-paying mentality is not enough. When people come to congregations where they say, you know, I got to go every week, it's what I'm supposed to do, so they come to pay their dues. That's not going to get the job done. That's not an infectious kingdom, is it? Now, secondly, a feed-me mentality. All of us who lead congregations know people who come, quote, to get fed. Well, that's nice. But we're not supposed to only get fed. We're supposed to do the work. The job of people like me is to train ordinary people in the congregation to do the work of service, to build up the body. So a feed-me mentality is not going to get the job done. Neither will a spectator mentality. A spectator mentality, what I call spectator spirituality. You come into a big room. There's a platform up front that's really a stage. There's a worship team up front that's really a band. There's a congregation out there that's really an audience, and there's a clergy person who's an inspirational speaker. Now, all of this may be done very well, but the question is, does this really help us to mature in the family likeness, to learn to really love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, and mind, love our neighbor as ourselves, to love each other as God, as Yeshua loved us? Does it really help us to grow in the obedience of faith for the sake of his name? Does spectator spirituality accomplish that? No, it doesn't. It accomplishes certain goals that are good, but these foundational goals it does not generally accomplish. Another thing which won't work is a shopper's mentality. Those of us who lead congregations, again, we all know people who come and they check our congregation out. They want to see how many bells and whistles we have. They want to have the maximum benefit with the minimum investment of their time and substance. So they're shopping around. That's not going to get the job done. We're supposed to be building the kingdom, not shopping around. What also won't work is a clergy laity imbalance where the assumption is, and I've seen this, people who've been believers in Yeshua for 30, 40 years who will say, I really don't know how to share my Yeshua faith with somebody. You'll have to go talk to my rabbi. Where the rabbi becomes the chief cook and bottle washer of the whole congregation, where all the work, all the spiritual labor is assumed to be his or her job. It's not that way. Our job is to train you to do the work of service. So a clergy laity imbalance won't get the job done. Also, now we have some eye problems. Individualized spirituality. Individualized spirituality, where people come to a congregation and they just think of themselves primarily as individuals with a relationship with God. They come and they worship, often with their eyes closed, and then they go home. But they're not really forming close relationships with people. And if they've been at that congregation for a while and, quote, it's not meeting their needs, they'll just migrate to another congregation, usually without even saying goodbye. This kind of individualistic spirituality is not going to get the job done. We're supposed to be developing manifestations of the family of God. Bigger is better won't work either, where we have an assumption. You have a nice congregation. If you have a larger congregation, they say, this is a really nice congregation. If you have an extremely large congregation, they say, this is a great congregation. Well, I like large, but bigger is not necessarily better, because the bigger a congregation gets, the larger the percentage of people who are spectators. So bigger is better is not going to get the job done. Finally, what I call monetary directionality. In many congregations, the real driver for the agenda of the congregation is how we're going to pay the bills. This doesn't sound nice. I don't mean to be nasty. I'm just being honest. How we pay the bills. Look at the agenda of the congregation, the work that the congregation does, the priorities of the congregation, the way in which the seats are filled. It all has to do with paying the bills. Now, I believe in paying bills, but I don't believe that our agenda, our mission, should be defined by our financial realities. These things are not really going to get the job done of developing embassies of the kingdom, face-to-face fellowships where we're maturing in the likeness of God, where we're growing in the obedience of faith for the sake of his name. I don't think that what we're looking at up here is going to be enough to get that job done. And I'll talk about some better ideas next time I see you here at Interfaithfulness, where we're building bridges, where history builds walls. Thanks for being here. Shalom for now.